us understand something that I think will be pretty abhorrent to most people who are listening to this now, and that is what happens in the mind of someone who wants to engage with sex with children. And Mark works in this field a lot, so he's a real expert on this, so I really want to get his insight. So I asked him, what's happening in the mind of someone who wants to engage with sex with children?
Absolutely, and of course today's figures for many will be shocking. They are actually the tip of the iceberg. I often use an analogy that actually they're not even in the boat yet heading towards the iceberg. It is as big a problem as that. And whilst the figures are very shocking, what we do know with sex offences, certainly with regards to children, it's the largest underreported crime. So there are many, many more out there. But the big issue, of course, and the question you ask is, what makes somebody offend in such a way? Well, the first thing is, of course, they have to have an interest and the desire to abuse a child or be engaged in some kind of activity involving children. But the two key elements of any offending behaviour is both access and opportunity. And without both of those, you can't offend. So that's what's really important. And this is where we need to change the element of where we police. Because actually what we need to change is we need to start becoming far more proactive rather than reactive. The large majority of those crimes that have been recorded are reactive crimes.
So the massive proliferation of images of child abuse online, does that A, make it easily accessible, one of the things you mentioned there, and also low risk to the curious, and B, validate that behaviour because people think, oh, there's loads of other people doing it online, so why don't I?
Well, the internet has created a new opportunity and a new platform. Let's be very clear, and recently I circulated on Twitter a report that was done in 1977 by the Time magazine, where it talked about the amount of child abuse images that existed, and videos where you could go into shops and purchase them. Of course, that's moved now onto online, and the sheer amount of abuse images, videos that exist online is absolutely shocking, and by and large, very, very underpoliced. Of course, what the internet affords the offender is anonymity, but also the opportunity to communicate with other like-minded individuals that they've never been able to before. Whereas before, in the 1970s and the early 80s, the only way really to gain access to child abuse images and videos was to go into a shop where you knew that was, or through contact magazines. Now, of course, by the touch of a button and use of certain social networking sites, chat rooms, forums, you can communicate with other like-minded individuals and swap and engage in, obviously, activity with children.
But what is it that makes somebody want to do this with children in the first place? Is it a power over them thing? Is it, obviously for gratification, a lack of social ability because maybe you can't form adult relationships, you can't get a girlfriend or a boyfriend? What is it that motivates people like this?
Well, it's all of those. And in fact, when we look at offending behaviour, I talked about access and opportunity, one of the other elements in motivation. But what motivates one person may be very different to what motivates another, and that's why it's very dangerous, certainly from both a policing and from a criminological point of view, to look at a motivation as being key. But some of the elements of why offenders offend, very much about control, particularly with child offences. It's about control, it's about power, it's about intimidation, it's about the fact that they need something to replace in their life, their inability to communicate on an adult level with other adults. And of course in many levels it's also about sex. You can't get away from the fact that there is a gratification, satisfaction over many of these offences. And for some it will be using the internet, and they will explore because naturally people are inquisitive. And for some they'll explore and straight away they'll see an image and that won't be what they like and they'll stop doing it. Others, they'll see it and they will have a predilection of it already and they'll continue to see. The problem is that the internet affords greater access and opportunity, and as a result of that, more people will go looking for this type of material. But this is the key issue that I'm making at this present moment in time, and it's something where the police at the moment need to change massively. The large majority of images that are recovered from offenders when they're seized are run through a a software check, and what they're establishing is known images. What we need to do is we need to move away from that and start becoming far more victim focused, because each and every image, each and every movie is evidence of a child being abused, and what we need to do is we need to start to analyse that. Now that's a big issue, and it's a big issue because a large majority of these offenders who are being searched have many thousands of images, and therefore the only way to deal with that is for individual officers to sit and go through those images, and that's a huge ask. It's a massive time issue. But until we start focusing on children and victim identification, we're not actually going to start making an impact on these offenders and actually start finding new victims, because all we're doing currently at this moment in time, in the majority of cases, is finding existing images that we know about.
Finally, Mark, tonight there's a Channel 4 documentary about the nursery worker who sent pictures of children to a paedophile. Why would she do that? You were talking about access and opportunity. She had both, but why would she abuse that trust?
Well, people abuse trust because there's an opportunity to be able to do that, and some of the enjoyment and satisfaction they get from that, particularly the case of the Plymouth nursery worker and, of course, the other people involved in that, Angela Allen and the male concerned. You know, these are individuals, Colin Blanchard, these are very dangerous individuals, and I spent some time with Greater Manchester Police who did the investigation and know the detail of the case completely, and it is one of the most horrific cases. The brutality, the gravity of the offending behaviour by both the women and the male involved was very, very serious. We do need to open up our eyes, and certainly professionals do need to, in respect of female offenders. I'm seeing too many female offenders being taken down the civil process and not being taken down through the court process. And if we use the similarity of a male offending compared to a female offending, there are an awful lot of female offenders that won't get prosecuted, and they are not dealt with through the criminal justice system. That needs to change, and we need to change our mindset, because going back to the point of access and opportunity, if you only need access and opportunity to be able to offend, who often has greater access and opportunity to children, men or women? Well, by and large, it's females, because they are considered to be the people that do the majority of the caring. That's why we need to change the shift in mentality, and professionals need to open their eyes.
That's the insight of Mark Williams-Thomas, a leading criminologist, and he also runs a child protection